well, our war hero has arrived. You made a good choice coming back here. Osage are the finest, wealthiest, and most beautiful people on God's earth. They outsmarted everybody. They have the say who gets the oil. Son, I got a question. You like women?
That's my weakness.
Det er altid en helt særlig begivenhed, når en ny Martin Scorsese-film udkommer i biografen. For den 80-årige instruktør er trods alt en af amerikansk filmhistories helt store koryfæer, med store film som Taxi Driver, Raging Bull, Goodfellas, Casino og The Departed på CV'et.
Getting the feeling we got a cop in my crew.
Sooner or later he's gonna find out who I am, and he's gonna kill me.
Og Scorseses nyeste film, Killers of the Flower Moon, er fyldt med instruktørens varemærker. Grådige gangstere, målrettede ordenshåndhævere, brutal vold og superstjerner som Robert De Niro og Leonardo DiCaprio, som begge har samarbejdet med Scorsese i årevis, men som nu for første gang spiller over for hinanden i en af Scorseses film.
Money flows freely here now.
I do love that money, sir.
Killers of the Flower Moon er et rystende historisk drama, der stiller skarpt på nedslagning af de indfødte i Osage-stammen.
Man, look.
I starten af 1900-tallet opdager det oprindelige folk olie i deres reservat, og ikke overraskende for det nogle grådige hvide rigmænd til at ty til korruption og mord for at skaffe sig adgang til oliefelternes rigdom.
Well, we mix these families together, and that estate money flows the right direction. It'll come to us.
Og midt i volden og vildskaben udspiller der sig et kompleks kærlighedsdrama mellem DiCaprios håndlanger Ernest og Osage-kvinden Molly, spillet af den exceptionelle Lily Gladstone.
I don't even know if you love me anymore.
Of course I love you.
And kill these men who killed my family.
Vi har talt med to af filmens vigtigste bagmænd. Modedesigneren Jacqueline West har været Oscar-nomineret hele 4 gange, blandt andet for sine kostumer til storfilm som The Revenant og Dune. Og lydmanden Mark Ulano vandt en Oscar for sit arbejde på James Camerons Titanic. Og han er især kendt for sit mangeårige samarbejde med Quentin Tarantino. Og sammen har West og Ulano spillet en afgørende rolle i skabelsen af det overbevisende og dragende tidsbillede i Scorseses nyeste film.
Was this a particularly complicated shoot? I mean, you've been on complicated shoots before, like The Hateful Eight and those conditions, but also here with the baking hot sun, with the scope of it, with the amount of people involved, the old cars, oil spluttering, all this stuff. Was it especially a hard shoot for you?
All of them are challenging in their own unique way. This had the layer of COVID right on top of it. We were at the height of the virus's assault on the world. We had 110 COVID professionals alone just to deal with the protocols on the set. And as you say, there are hundreds of people involved, both behind and in front of the camera. But it's still the film grammar of, the intimacy. It's a love story, deep, folded deeply into a major crime tragedy mystery. So that aspect never was lost. We had a very iconic seasoned leader to take us on the journey. And I think it's manifest when you see the film now, how successful he has been. I was born and brought up in New York City, and my time of coming into age there was in the 1970s when Marty really was emerging as this, icon to all of us young film students. He was just a few years ahead of us, but had broken through. And to work with Marty, it was very special.
What was that?
Shomikasi. That's how you are.
I don't know what she said, but it must have been Indian for handsome devil.
In this particular circumstance, we had this amazing collaboration of cast. Not just that Bob has done 10 movies with Marty, Leo has done 7, and many of us have done many with each other. This is my 4th with Leo. And this was an actor's, playground in so many ways because the complexity of the characters really pulled hard at the deep possibilities. And Leo and Lily were just amazingly able to disappear into their characters, but not just in terms of visually and physical language, but also the tonalities of their voice patterns layered on top of the Osage language, which is this amazingly majestic, patient, and dignified drumbeat underneath. and informs the whole film in a way by its reminder on a continuous emotional basis of the unbelievable assault on the dignity of this community and how they never lost that dignity regardless of the tragedy that was foisted upon them. So Leo as a character is such a torn character, and that also appears, and Marty was brilliant about bringing this into the story.
We need the shots.
Bob De Niro is, as a character, fluent in the language, in the Osage language. And it's a very interesting thing. Language is an invitation to trust when you become a learner of a second language in another community. I'm learning that very specifically as I live in Italy and in a deep intensive language training. But it's not a small thing for humans. And so the character of Bob De Niro uses language as a tool of betrayal. Because he seduces his whole primary community of the Osage as the liaison to the white community in a state of trust. And I think language and the tone of language is the first doorway for that trust, which his character profoundly breaks.
I know that you're really considered a true pioneer in terms of on-set recording. And I know, of course, you've collaborated a lot with Quentin Tarantino for a couple of decades now. And I know that he has...
28 years, almost 3 decades.
Wow, that's amazing. And of course, he has this really famous dedication to capturing all the dialogue on set during the shoot itself, as opposed to re-recording and dubbing the lines afterwards. And I wanted to know, like, comparatively, how is Scorsese's intent in terms of the recording on the set? Is he as vigorous in terms of capturing as much as possible during the shoot itself?
I would, and I want to demystify a piece about Quentin. Is his passion for that has little to do with sound and everything to do with performance. His passion is about the sacred space between the director and the actors really as conduits for the idea. What's the idea? What's the intent? The director's intent, the intent of the story, and how do the actors create that in collaboration with the artists and performers behind the camera. Quentin's a repertoire company orchestrator of a band of crazy artists. Highly unstable, dynamic personalities all coming together to doing the thing that we love doing the most. So it's always a joyride. Marty is of the same stripe. Aside from the fact they're both Sicilians, it's a very inclusive director as a coach.
Yeah, come on in. There you go. Go ahead.
As a guide, to telling the story in the most fundamental way that the story needs to be told. And so there's a great similarity in that regard. Personal style is different. But, hammers and nails are hammers and nails. So that aspect to me is agnostic. What's really at core is they are of the same stripe of the story is the thing. And how do we invite the audience to invest, to believe, to connect the characters to the audience? That's always manifest as the primary mission, each shot, each day. And, people don't always realize that every shot in a film is handmade by a group of artists intensely focused on that piece.
I wanted to hear, first of all, because I know you did some extensive research on your work on this film. I mean, studying hundreds of photographs from the era and of the Osage. And I wanted to hear, what were some of your main takeaways from that huge pre-production phase?
Well, thousands of photos, thousands. I had boards floor to ceiling, 10 feet high that covered a room about 4 times the size of this room, all the way around. Maybe we should donate them all to the Osage. It was really thrilling for me because though I had portrayed through costumes other plains nations, never the Osage, and they were so different. They were quite magnificent. Thomas Jefferson referred to them as the most magnificent people he'd ever seen. The men were 6 feet tall, the women 5'10", and it was a challenge dressing them because you don't find those kinds of things ready-made. We made everything. But what I took away from my research on the Osage, I did many levels of research. I learned on the New World, sometimes written descriptions are better than pictures. And so I read every book I could find. Linda Hogan's Mean Spirit. I watched Murnau's Sunrise. I watched an incredible film by Henry King that really helped me with Leo's character and with Bob's character, William Hale. It was called The Winning of Barbara Worth. And I watched a movie that my husband told me I had to see because he just loved how the cowboys were portrayed in it. Blood on the Moon. It turned out it was one of Marty's favorite movies, just because I wanted to not do the standard cookie cutter cowboys. And one of the most telling things were the home movies that the Osage made, because only the British royal family, I think, was able to afford home movies of that era, 21 to 25. They were $1,800 a minute. But they documented their lives, traveling, going to sporting events. The young men played Ivy League football. The women shopped in Paris. They traveled all over. And they owned airplanes. They flew. They had incredible Pierce Arrow cars. More were sold in Osage County than any place in the world. They were kind of the Kuwaitis of the 20s. And it was magnificent. Their taste level, but they were unique. In their studio portraits, they still maintained the clothing of their ancestors. They'd wear modern clothing, you know, the most incredible stores of New York, Paris, London, Tiffany jewelry, but they maintained their blankets, the women. And the men maintained a wonderful Western look. They never caved into the suits and ties of the lawyers and the guardians. They had a Western look. You see it in Henry Roan's character in the film with the Spanish heeled cowboy boots, and it's called the open crown, a cowboy hat, that they maintain this kind of Western look, but made it their own. They made it Osage. With their neckerchiefs, they wore slides of German silver, traditional to Osage chiefs. They hung on to things that were traditional, and these items of clothing are unique to the Osage. Pendleton made them their own patterns of blankets in their own color palette, and they had wonderful sense of color, and they maintained finger weaving, which you don't see the other Plains nations using. So on many levels, that was all revealed in these photographs that I pulled and in these home movies, and then reading about them, how they differed from, say, the Pawnee or the Kiowa or the other Plains Native American nations.
I was wondering, on a project like this, where you're working with real people set in a real time and space, that, you know, the balancing act between sort of your creative freedom as an artist and also rigid historical authenticity, is that a difficult balancing act, or aren't they mutually exclusive?
For me, I love research. I was an art historian, so I love taking a photo that's real and replicating it. I knew how important that was to Marty to do it that way, but also how I've always approached dressing characters is getting to know them. I live by this mantra of reading a script 7 times before I even start. So I know these characters. Like, there were sisters and looked so similar in studio photographs wrapped in their blankets, but each of them were individuals. And as you read the script and their relationship builds with Molly's character, you sense who they really are. And how I've always approached every movie I've ever done, I do mostly period films, is I get to know the character and I pretend I'm taking them shopping back in their time with what was available to them within their lifestyle and their economic circumstance and who they are as individuals. And then they pick their own clothes. They make their own choices for me. And I almost have to step aside. And each character, I tried to, as Anna East Nin, to quote one of my favorite women ever, she said, by the choices that person makes, a hanky, a pair of shoes, it reveals their inner riches. And I live by that.
Don't do something you're going to regret for the rest of your life.
I ain't got nothing but regret.